Alright, so this video was originally going to be a live stream, but because it would be my first time live streaming on YouTube, I need to wait out a 24-hour time frame. So anyway, I had some things that I needed to get done, and I just haven't. I've been procrastinating with them, so I thought I would do them live and get some momentum in the areas and basically just document it, see what comes of it. So what those things are actually making progress with logging some of the research that I've come across and deriving insights from it, and then making upgrades to the system. So really this video is going to be a demonstration of my research system as it currently works, and I'll be highlighting along the way the issues that I've come across with it and what fixes I want to make. And really just depending on how much time I have, how long it takes to get through one of the studies, I might begin making fixes or upgrades to the system itself. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this canvas that I've put together. So since the video that I put out originally to demonstrate or to walk through the research system that I was using, I've made just a few upgrades to it. The main one is actually using multiple canvases. So anybody that's actually tried to put together and play with the system that I was using quickly notice just how unwieldy it becomes. So very difficult to navigate. You can see there's arrows going everywhere. So what I found out is that with Metadata Menu, it is fairly easy to use multiple canvases and still trace back through the links to find similar items, meaning that I could create insights and takeaways, put them in different canvases, and have arrows linking to them, and still the code that I come up with to trace back through those links would still be able to find insights and original studies across canvases. So this specific canvas is dedicated to nutrition, and specifically I've really just been looking at supplements. And we'll get into one of those today, but as you can see, I mean, it's not easy to navigate. You can use a plugin called Simple Canvas Search, which will let you search through the canvas itself, which is really helpful. You can search for individual file names, but that only goes so far. There's another plugin that I tried, I can't remember the name of it, but it set up a screen over here that was supposed to help navigate where you were supposed to be able to click around, sort of like Miro, if you've ever used Miro. But it didn't work well. So because it's an infinite canvas and it's not easy to navigate, it can continue to grow and grow and grow, and it can be very difficult to find your place. So anyway, I've split out. I've gone from one canvas to several. I can't remember how many I've got working right now. But even within one canvas, again, if you've played around with this system at all, you quickly notice just how tedious it is, or how much effort it takes to really think through insight creation and takeaway generation and basically extracting all the information you want to from studies, which is really nice. I don't think that's a bad thing. As I did mention in the original video, though, it is somewhat inefficient, or you could argue it's inefficient. But what it really hinders me from doing is quickly adding notes on something. In fact, it has become quite a barrier to me actually wanting to dive into the research, because I know on the other end as soon as I dive in, it's going to take a lot of time. I need to dedicate a lot of time and focus to actually making use of something. And I'm not sure that's always necessary. So anyway, this video, I'm going to demonstrate one of these. In fact, you can see how much I've been procrastinating. I've worked through several studies that I wanted to derive insights from, and then I thought that if I got momentum by just parsing out the source content from several other studies, that eventually I would come back to them and derive the insights, but haven't gotten around to it yet. So the last one that I left off with, I'm going to work on now, and you can see, my thought process, and this is just how it goes. So anyway, this study today is about Urolithin A. I became very interested in Urolithin A after a podcast called The Metabolic Link, and Anurag Singh was the guest and talked about Urolithin A. He heads up a company called Timeline Nutrition, and he also is on several of the studies on Urolithin A. So anyway, looking at the research on Urolithin A, I became really interested in it because there is some research to suggest it can prevent the progression of osteoarthritis and intervertebral disc degeneration. And I'm very interested in both of those things. So I wanted to come up with some sort of framework or see if it's worth actually using this supplement. So this is one of those studies. So actually, as the title suggests, this is about intervertebral disc degeneration. It's an in vivo study, which is nice. Unfortunately, it's not in humans, but at least in the rat model, they can see outcomes in terms of, I believe it's a puncture model, and they can see the progression of disc degeneration after puncturing a disc, and the results are promising. So if I remember correctly, I think PQQ and Urolithin A are the only supplements I've actually looked at so far in this nutrition canvas. And one of the studies that I come back to a lot that actually feeds into many insights across studies is animal dosing. So this study right here, not study, this is an FDA handbook, I guess, of some sort. But anyway, it's a guide to dosing in humans based on animal doses. So not perfect. Looks like it's based on surface area of the animal, if I'm not mistaken. But it does give some multiplication or division factors to use with animal dosing. So a lot of these studies are in mice and rats, so that comes in really handy when trying to determine what, or estimate what an equivalent human dose of something would be. So all that is to say, I'm still procrastinating, as you can see, to actually dive into this thing. So, in this study, where to begin? Let's see. The main things that I want to understand about this compound are how it works, if it works in vivo, and what dose was used, if so. Or actually, if it didn't work, I'd like to know what dose was used as well. So anyway, this one, in this case, it did seem to work. Now, in these studies, there are often extra details, right? So if anybody actually watches this video, I'm probably speaking to the choir about information in studies and results, and what if you were to take the results of a study and try to use them in either your own life or in your own research, then arguably the most important are going to be the in vivo results, and everything else is often mechanistic or trying to understand exactly how it's working or not working. And it's, all the results are presented as a story. So, and you can see that as you go through a results section, they're often presented as if there was a clear line of thinking when performing the study. They did this thing and then they got this result, and then they did this thing and then they got this result. If you've worked in research, you know that's not necessarily the case. Anyway, tangent. So what I'm trying to get at is this stuff is cool, but for my purposes, I want to know the objective measures for the in vivo work and the methods that they used to measure those things and arrive at those results. Meaning, okay, in this case, they have day 0 and day 28 results from, let's see, these look like X-ray results looking at disk space, or they call it disk height index, and some changes from those. So I'm most interested in these. So I believe that's probably, that's what I actually derived or had taken from the study with plans to use. So that means this figure and this figure, this figure, anything that is immediately useful to tell me whether or not this compound could be useful for me. So what I need to do is take these figures and combine them with the original methods to derive insights. So we've got the animal model, the surgical procedure, the MRI. Oh, was that MRI or X-ray? Okay. Well, anyway, it's like they did both. So, well, here are MRI images. Makes sense. So insights I can derive from this. Well, one, I need to know the dose. So they have already calculated the dose. So this is the dose in rats. And what I'm going to do is just put a note out here and go ahead and find. Sorry, it's kind of slowing down. I need to find the dosing study. Okay, so they use 25 milligrams per kilogram per day. So actually I could have done that here. I'm just going to do a placeholder. So this is an issue I'm not sure how to get around, which is when things are spaced around the canvas really far and you need to connect them, this is really messy. One, it's kind of slow. It's not navigating very quickly. Two, it's far away, and so it creates this ridiculously long arrow. And this is hilarious. So in the past, I have set up databases using DB folder and Dataview. And instead of connecting things with arrows, I would, here we go. I would select, I could create insights basically as part of relational databases. But even then, it's all about finding things. That's the big difficulty, is like, say you create an insight and you don't remember the exact wording of it, but you have two evidence sources that or pieces of source content that would support that insight. Or maybe you have two insights that would support another insight. It's all about finding things. So visually, this really helps. But if you've ever, again, used Miro, much easier to get around and navigate Miro than this. And move things around, grouping things. Anyway. So I know I'm going to need this. It's going to add support for whatever insights that I'm going to make here, because basically all those insights are tied to the dosing strategy. Now it has been a while since I've created an insight in here, so I'm going to jump back to some of the last ones that I made and just see my wording on them. So I'm actually going to copy that and use it as a guide. All right, let's see how this does. So this is the table of insights. And another problem with this system is, or really with the tools that the system relies on, is the creation of insights here. What exactly was that problem? There's a problem which makes me create placeholder notes en masse while I'm working through stuff. I'll remember exactly what that issue was, but anyway, what I usually do is create a bunch of placeholder notes and then come back and click into them and edit them. So might as well keep that off to the side. I need to word this thing, so that's not it. Okay, anyway. I'll just serve as inspiration. I don't need to copy it. This is interesting, speaking out loud as I work through stuff. Probably weird to listen and watch if anybody is actually doing that. So let's see the study. What do I want to do? I want to record an insight. Basically what they found is that between figure A and figure B shows that there is a significant difference in the progression of technically it's the progression of disc degeneration. I wonder if these were adult mice. "12 weeks old." So the reason I asked that is I'm wondering if the discs were fully formed by the time that this model was used, which I believe was disc puncture. Seems pretty common. Yeah. So disc puncture model. So I need to know when So a quick Google search looks like these are male rats. Stop growing around 9 months old. Okay, so these are adult male rats, which means that their discs should be fully formed by the time that the disc puncture occurs. And so that means that Urolithin A can prevent the progressive loss of disc height following disc puncture. Yeah. So these titles do have a maximum number of words, so I'll take that into consideration. It gets really wordy, or try to get very information dense, get as much detail in as possible. So Urolithin A prevents the progressive loss of intervertebral, I'm going to say intervertebral disc height following a puncture model in adult male rats at a dose of. That's another issue, is that so I use titles to make it easy to find. And that means the file name has restrictions. And those include backslashes, or slashes, I can't remember which ones. No, these are forward slashes. Backslashes probably don't work either, yeah. So milligrams per kilogram per day could be spelled out, but that takes up more space and it reads weird. Anyway, so this is how I do it. So milligrams per kilogram per day. Now, is that consistent with other insights? Yeah, there's a dosing time. I need the timeline. So, actually I should have copied this. I don't have a fully fleshed out set of principles to go on. Kind of learning as I go with this. To stay consistent. So the dose is there. How long did they take it? Four weeks. Now, one interesting thing, just as a side note, for Urolithin A dosing, it's really common for them to give it as part of the diet. So this dose, just thinking out loud, it was mixed with the rodent diet at a certain concentration, but it really assumes a lot with regards to, unless they're weighing the food and they actually averaged it out. Well, I guess it assumes some, so this is not an exact number, but it's a ballpark. But anyway, where am I? I'm lost. More problems with the system. You can get lost. Usually I've got three main screens, or yeah, three fairly large screens and then a laptop screen sometimes, which really helps, but I want to get as much inside this one frame as possible. So what do I need to do? This is the new one. Rinse. I'm trying to model it after an IVD puncture. Whew. This is definitely a learning experience here. Progressive loss of disc height in a dose after an IVD puncture. And at 12 months of age, compared to rats. All right, I think that does it. Oh, 12-week old. How did I not catch that? These are young mice. Okay, well that would take away or change the insight, or change my interpretation of the data, because just thinking of other possible explanations for the change in disk height, or the key, how that would relate. So getting past just the insights, what possible takeaways could I generate, or could this insight be useful for? I mean, so Urolithin A could be working through a mechanism that's not present in adults. These are arguably developing discs. I guess I could try to look into finding, when exactly does the rat intervertebral disc stop developing. But that would send me down a rabbit hole. So what I'm going to do, this is where assumptions come into place. And assumptions are inevitable. So what I'll need to do is I'm going to test this. All right, so working with the canvas means that I have to search for files. So what I'm going to try to do is I'll just add files on a separate screen. I wonder if they appear. I wonder if it's synced. Add a file. It's not synced. Oh, it is. There's just a delay. That's cool. Okay, so with this one insight that has taken, I don't know how many minutes to generate, the information I used came from the animal section, talked about the disc puncture, it's drawing from, it's based on 4A and 4B. Yeah, and it is, I mean, that's not just marginally different. That's interesting. I wonder, and they're not statistically significant, but within 4 weeks there was a change in disc height index, or potentially non-significant change in disc height index. This falls between those two. That's interesting. I mean, these are already, I wonder if the curve tells anything. If that indicates like segment instability or anything. That's got some curve. That could just be the setup, but these are like jagged. That's good. All right, anyway. So many tangents. So I used 4A and 4B. Which means I used radiographic analysis. So yeah, so anytime I'm looking at a study, first thing, if I want to use it in here, the first thing I do is find out what results are relevant to any takeaways I'm looking to create down the line. And really it comes down to actions. So this is another key part of the system that I've begun working on, but actions and outcomes. It's another part of the system that I'll need to work through, put more work into, to make it more usable for myself and for anybody else. Which is why I would look at the study in the first place. So in my case, I want to, the outcome would be prevent progression of osteoarthritis and prevent progression of disc degeneration. So that's what the goal that I'm working towards, is finding anything that could support those outcomes. So when I'm looking through the studies, I'm looking for any data that would most directly translate to those outcomes, or actually most like those outcomes. I guess mechanisms are interesting, but right now I'm not so concerned about mechanisms, or a lot of in vitro work. A lot of in vitro work uses fairly high concentrations, or concentrations that I don't know how realistic they are to target. For example, if these nucleus pulposus cells are treated with 20 millimolar urolithin A, for me to really be able to use that information, I would need to know what's realistic in terms of what concentrations of urolithin A could I expect to see within an intervertebral disc after supplementing with urolithin A. I mean, is it realistic to get up to 20 millimolar? I have no idea. So I don't, if I can, wherever possible, go with the in vivo stuff. And anyway, that's what drew me to figures 4, 5, and 6. And when I do that, I grab the figures that I'm interested in, and I grab the methods that seem most relevant to those. So a lot of this is probably really obvious. I'm just talking my way through it. Where am I? I keep getting lost. All right. So I don't think I need the histopathologic analysis. That would look like figure 6. So that is one insight. But yeah. And while I'm working on this insight, I might as well, I need to log that assumption. And this is a point I'm not 100% on with the system itself, is where to attach the assumptions. In this case, the assumption is that the age of the animal does not affect the outcome. So actually it would not be an assumption for this. I could just attach the assumption to the next insight, where I basically translate or transform this insight into a more malleable form that I could use with other insights, or is more closely related to my target outcome, which is I'm a human. If I'm going to take Urolithin A, what can I expect? So for now, let's see how I did it with other ones. Wow, I've been recording for 40 minutes already, and I've got one insight. So you can see just how much goes into one or insight creation. So the most relevant would be the one I looked at before. Okay, here's how I've done it in the past. Yeah, I think what makes most sense is to group things, because all of these are markers of disc degeneration, or these are results related to disc degeneration, or IVD degeneration. So what I did was derive these insights and then group them together into one, because I'm not so concerned about the specifics, like disc height or collagen incorporation. I just want to know, can it prevent, in general, disc degeneration or not? So I think grouping them together, like I've done here, so creating basically creating all the baseline insights, grouping them into one more general, and attaching the assumption about age to that one would make the most sense. So as you can see, that's what I've done here, grouped them into here, and this was also 25 milligram per kilogram per day. These were a bit older rats, and tie them in here. And actually, this one needs an assumption about age as well, because these are not fully developed rats. Okay. So derive the insights, group them, and use them. So the next insight is going to be, all right, so use that one. I think that's why I do these like this, because I create, yeah, that's why. I create a bunch of placeholders at once, because there's not a whole lot of space to work with and to think through when adding the file name. So what I do is create a bunch of placeholder ones that I can then click into separately and have all this space to work with. All right, so I can do make a similar insight about Fearman grades. So let's see, what I can do is basically copy this, create a separate insight, prevents the progressive It's not a loss of Fearman grade, but again, come back to see how I've done it before. Reduces the Fearman grade. Ah. Even that's not worded great. So Urolithin A does not reduce the Fearman grade. What it does is it prevents the reduction, and not even prevent, it mitigates. How do you say prevent progression or slow progression? I think they use ameliorates is a commonly used word in these studies, but even that doesn't really capture. I mean, basically, we don't know what happens after the 4-week mark, so this would reduce the progression. I mean, it's really the progressive increase in yeah. So just as a side note, I've been really inspired to do something like this, even though it may never be seen, especially never be seen like the full video. But Nicole Vanderhoeven, I think she's the main inspiration for working in public like this, just to get this out there. But she, in interviews, podcasts, or videos, all the above, she talks about the concept of continuous integration, continuous delivery, in not just the software development world, but also in your own note-taking. And I know that's part of the Zettelkasten system, as I understand it, is to go back through and update regularly. But anyway, it's a perfect example. Looking at something again with fresh eyes, different day. It's not worded correctly. It wasn't worded correctly, and I'm sure that there are many other cases like that. So, yeah. So anyway, I can't get bogged down looking for all the places where it's not worded correctly. I'll just fix them as I come across them. And so in this case, prevents the, how did I word it? Reduces a progressive increase. Slows. We don't know yeah. Slows the increase. Doesn't need to be progressive. We just know where it was and at one time point and at another time point. So slows the progression. Really, let's get probably. Okay, it slows the progression of Fearman grade. Yep, so that's a new insight. Go back to the board, see it magically appear. And in this case, got the age of the animals, we've got the puncture model, we've got the MRI methods, and we've got the MRI results. Okay, now the histological analysis. So I don't, again, this is a situation where I'm not that concerned about the specific staining results. I'm more interested in taking the overall data presented here collectively, what insight I can derive. So it looks like it reduces the progression in histologic score. It's really fluffy. In fact, histologic score, if I remember correctly, I've seen in different studies that can mean completely opposite things or be measured in completely opposite ways. So sometimes a better histologic score or a higher histologic score is better, or more normal, and sometimes a lower, or sometimes in the untreated puncture model, as an example, they would have reduced histologic scores compared to sham or control animals. I guess sham. No, probably control, yeah. And in other studies it would have higher histologic score. So anyway, I'm going to go back to see how I did this before, how I worded it, because this is probably similar. Well, this says increases the histologic score, so it's also not the best way to describe it. So here, I mean, at the end of the day, it's narrowing the gap between the group that was treated narrowing the gap between the animals that had the IVD puncture and those that did not. So I think just for simplest, just to prevent a headache, and I really don't like that. I mean, I could say improves, but that's not a specific. slows the worsening. What would be nice is to know if these are significantly different from each other, but we don't. I think since I'm not using it, I'm spending way too much time on this. It really bothers me. To get that wording right, because I know I'm just going to accumulate more and more insights around that, or similar insights anyway. What does it do? It it slows the increase in the histologic score. Yep, there it is. I'll go back and fix the other one. Nope. Yeah, so in this case it slowed the reduction. Okay, I'm an hour in. I've got 3 insights. Which may not be the best measure, but so now I'm going to combine these into one that I can use. Oh, that's good. Okay, so overall, it slows the progression of IVD degeneration. Yeah. Huh. Did this just not update? Why can't I rename that? Okay. Wow, I think I just got caught in a loop. Did I just copy? I think I just copied a title, corrected it as I was changing it, and then went back to update the, oh man. Okay. So Urolithin A slows the progression of IVD degeneration. Now I should be able to do it. There we go. Okay. Now these support this. And now I have something more usable. Because I'm more interested in overall disc degeneration and the potential of Urolithin A to slow or prevent the progression. Now I need to, okay, so here, this may not be necessary. Let's see how I did it in the past. So in the past, I did the general one. Okay. So this column is takeaways. And this is already translated into a human dose. So it already has the dose equivalence. This is not necessary. I need to connect this directly. Probably not this one, nope. Yep, there we go. Now, so previously, the assumption was tied directly to the takeaway, and this is a general assumption. IVD degeneration progresses similarly between rats and humans. We also need to assume that the puncture model is adequate for, yeah, and see in that case, put it here. I tied it to this, but it's not really where it should go. Oh, there's another update we'll need to add to a future dedicated video on the system. Is that it was pointed out to me, luckily, that the arrows should be going from the assumptions to the insights or to the takeaways instead of the other way around. Because really it's arrows point towards whatever they're supporting. And this is really better, more appropriate here. And this is where I can add the age assumption as well. So here's how I can do that. So now how to word this. I mean, technically there are a couple of assumptions that would be made. It's not just that IVD degeneration progresses similarly between rats and humans, is that IVD progression IVD degeneration progresses similarly amongst rats of all ages. And really, I mean, it's assumptions all the way down. You could say that IBD degeneration something about how Urolithin A would affect IBD degeneration. The same across rats of all ages. And this is specifically in response to a puncture model. Okay, I think I'm getting really into the weeds here. I'm not sure it's necessary to go. Well, hey, might as well. I'm here. Let's do it. I won't have these types of assumptions everywhere, but I guess the goal is to always do better. So, it's really the effect of Urolithin A on at the end of the day, these assumptions are basically collectively reminders that all these insights are that amongst all the insights there are some from animal models using rats of different ages, and those models involve IBD punctures. So anyway, I think that at least demonstrates how much effort currently goes into creating insights and, in this case, supporting a takeaway that I already created. Now luckily, as long as I calculated everything correctly, 25 milligrams per kilogram in a rat it translates to a fairly low dose in humans. So 4 milligrams per kilogram per day in humans. Say 70 kilogram person would be about 280 milligrams of Urolithin A per day. Timeline Nutrition, their Urolithin A supplement MitoPure comes at a dose of 500 milligrams per day. So based on the rat data, that's good. Now, the mouse data, just thinking out loud, mouse data, I believe it was for, yeah, that was for arthritis. There must have been a mouse study on disc degeneration. Maybe not. Yeah. So arthritis is larger. That came from a mouse study. Anyway. So yeah, I am not going to begin implementing the changes to the system right now. I'll record that in another working video like this. This was a test. Hopefully the mower is not too loud. Yeah, if anybody made it through, let me know what you think. Again, it's a work in progress. This is just documenting the journey. And it's all learning. And yeah, I do plan on making the system better, more usable, more easily usable for quick adds. That's the next big thing to add here. I'm also working on ways to organize notes and things like that. So anyway, until next time.